Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today, Masechtas Bava Kama Vav. We're going to begin on the very top of Vav Amud Aleph, top line by the two dots. Asana Shavash Behen. So our Mishnah said that these four avos have certain things in which they are in common, which they have in common. Lasuye, which comes to include my. What's it coming to include? So Omer Rabbi Lasuye Avno Sekino Umasoi. When it comes to either a stone, a knife, or a package, shenichan barosh gago was put on the top of a roof. The nafa baruch matsuya, and a normal wind came, v'heziku, and it blew and it caused damage. So heichadami ibahadi azli kamaski, while it was moving, it damaged hainu eish. That's similar to fire. Ma'ishna eish. When it comes to fire, there's something else that's mixed in with it, namely the wind. Your property shemers l'lecha. So it's through the gravity of it falling down. So it's really the same thing as eish. Velo what? Busted in naichi. If we're talking about after it already landed, so idaf karin who, if let's say you're a mafker, the stone, so ben l'rab ben l'shmol hainu bor. That's the same thing as a pit. So there's no difference. Look at Rashi. In the middle of this Rashi Hanubor, af kol tekalasai shehifker. Anything that you have which is dangerous, that you're a mafkir, chayiv, you still are obligated if someone gets injured there. The hanami techilasa siyaslan nezek. That's still considered to be something which can cause damage. Tahabi la suke adaite disofa lipoil baruch matsuya. So he says that when it comes to if it's on the top, you should again anticipate that it's Ruach Matsuya. Okay. So Maishna Bor Shekant Techilas Siyasal and Ezek, it causes damage initially. So So what are you talking about? How could you say that our Mishnah is coming to include something? It's really already part of either Eish or Bor. Ella Delo Afkarinhu. Must be, we're talking about it fell on the ground, and you were not mafker that stone. So Shmuel the Omer Kol Mebor Lamanu Hainu Bor. So again, how does that help? Oilam Dafkarenu. Really, you were mafker, the stone, this knife, this package. So that's the same thing as bor. So the Gemara says no. V'lo dam bor. It's not the same. Malabor shechein ein koyach achem or boy. When it comes to a bor, there's no other koyach that's mixed in with it. There's no wind. All these other ones, there's some ruach acher. So it says 1 second. That when it comes to fire, we see that it is ruach achem uraboy. So he says mal eshechen dark hazik. But it goes out of its way to damage. That even though a bort is not dark chahazik because it's stationary, you're still chayiv because they're din. So therefore, this is one answer. So let's look at question 3. It's on the top. O bor hamisgalgel. Okay, let's hold off because we're going to get to that. Rabbi Omer Lasui Bor Hamis Galgel Baragli Adam Baragli Behem. We're talking about a pit in which it caused through the feet of people and animals to be kicked around. Kigoin says Rashi Haniach Evan Bershusarab. You had a stone there. Oidim Koimos in its place. Loazika didn't do any damage. The Gilgal Ragli Adam Behemel Makamacher Behazika Sham. But because it was kicked and moved to another place, it caused damage somewhere else. So Eichadami. Idi Afkarin, who, if this stone was Hefker, so ben the Rabbi Lishmol Hanu Bor. Mashna Bor, Shechen Tichlas Siyasal Nezek, Shmers Alecha, Hanin Abchilas Siyasal Nezek, Shmers Alecha. So again, it's the same thing as a bor. El Delo Afkarin, maybe it was not Mafker, this stone. So Lishmol the Amrikol Mabor, Manu Hanu Bor. So again, how is this an extra chiddush? Really, it was hefker. So it was hefker, and it was moving around. So again, it shouldn't be any different than either shor or bor. Now, v'lo dami labor. We say it's again not comparable to labor. Why? Malabor shechen masav garmulo. Your actions is what caused it. What does he mean? Your actions, says Rashi, kriyasoi garma sahezek. You're the one that dug that pit. You did the action of digging a pit. When it came to the stone, the fact is, where the stone was, no one was going to get injured. It was the fact that someone else kicked it, moved it to a more dangerous location. That's what caused people to get injured. So Shoryochiach, says Rashi, Shein Mase Balim Garmu Tehezek El Mamoino. It's not the owner that caused the damage, it's his property. It goes out of its way to do damage. Which does not go out of its way. Etc. So that is a second answer of L'Suyemai. So now let's look at question 3. It fell off the roof. That it rolled because of other people kicking it. And it rested. Why do we say it's not like bor? These both cases are like bor. So he said, there was some other koyach, right? There was it fell down through wind, through gravity, as opposed to this pit, it was stationary. Or malabor hamas galgel, this rolling stone, shein masid garmulo. It wasn't my actions, it was someone else's term of before, where I'm the one that dug it. Okay. Fine. The Chazar do exactly what is that. Ravad Baravo Imerli Sui Hadasai. Just come to include the following. So this is the third answer now. Kol Elu. All of these Sha'amru that we said, Poiskin Biboy Sehim Vigarfin Ma'ori Sehen. So we're going to have this later on. That we allow that you can basically clear out its gutters and its caves. Says Rashi, Kol elu she'amar chachamim sheishim hen rishus lahashlech niskehen rishus rabin. You can remove its damage into a public. Ve'elhein poiskin biboy sehen poiskin sinoi sehen. You can open up your gutters so the water can pour out, and it's going to pour from the chutzner into rishus rabim. So you're allowed to do that. But even though it's true, or Begarfin Marosehen is throwing fertilizer, Zevel, into the Rosh Hashanah. So back in the Gemara, in the summer months, Ein Lehen Rishus. So in that time, you do not have permission. Ein Lehen Rishus. Why? It says Rashi Mnesha Harachoiv Noah, because during that time the roads are nice, and you're ruining it. However, back in the Gemara, however, in the Mosek Mishamim, where it's all muddy and rainy, so in that situation you could dump it out. So all these different things you're allowed to dump out into Rosh Hashanah in the rainy season. Now the Gemara says, even though you're allowed to do it, you're still going to be responsible if someone gets damaged because of that. Even though you're allowed to do it, it's not against the law, but you're going to still be chayiv if someone's injured. So hey chidami, it was damaged. Someone was damaged while it was being poured out. So koichahu, it's like your koyach, says Rashi Hainu Adam. It's like you yourself. Right? It's like you take a knife and you stab someone. It's not like, oh, it's the knife. No, it's me. It's my koyach. So if I do damage and I throw something, and that while it's in the process of moving, it causes damage, that's koychai. Ella busted the knife. Must be already landed. It's initially created to damage, potentially. So it's like a boar. So So really, again, we're talking about it was hefker. This case of pouring, let's say, liquid or fertilizer into the Rosh Hashanah is not the same. as a bore. Malabor shekain shelo b'reshus, because digging a pit in the middle of the Reshus Harabim, you were not given permission to do that. Termi b'hani de b'reshus. In this case, it's a big chiddush because it was reshus. You technically were allowed to do it. So you would maybe think that you would be chayiv. Back in the Gemara on Vav Amud Beis, shorta yoichiach. What's that? Says Rashi, "Shereshus based in who mahalich b'reshus harabim shar kol adam yeshu reshus b'kach nim hizachayiv." Are you allowed to bring your ox into the reshus harabim? Of course, you're allowed to. So it's the same thing. That a shore, even though it's allowed to go into the reshus harabim, could do damage, and if it does damage, you're going to be chayiv. So it's the same thing as the water. Now, but malo shor shekain darkol el chahazik. It goes out of its way to do damage. Bar tochiach, that it doesn't go out of its way to do damage. So again, that's the third answer. Ravina Omer, a fourth possibility. It's coming to include that which we learned. If you have a wall and a tree, and it fell into the Reshus Harabim, this wall. So it says you're potter. You don't have to pay if your wall fell into Reshus Harabim damaged. But let's say you were told a certain amount of time to cut off the tree, to dismantle the wall, but now if you were given 30 days and it fell within, let's say, 15 days, you're potter because you were didn't do anything wrong because you didn't have to dismantle it yet. However, if you were told you have 30 days and it happened 2 months in and you didn't do anything about it and it fell, then you're going to be chayiv. Now, hechidami, similar shakavatari here. If you're a mafker, this wall that fell down, it's the same thing. Either lo afkarin, if you weren't mafker this wall or tree that fell down, the Shmuel Diamar Kolman Borel Manu Hanabor. The oilam dafkarino. We made it hefker. So we made it hefker, this wall that fell down, so it's the same thing as bor. So why can't we just learn it from there? No, below dumble bor. Malabor sheken tichilasa sisel nezek. It was originally created and it was going to do damage. However, when it comes to this wall, when you built it originally, it wasn't for going to do damage because it was standing upright. It only fell later. That even though a shore initially is not doing damage, is not created to do damage, right? Nonetheless, if it does damage, you're chayiv. Okay. Question 4. Your wall So he said, if you were given time to dismantle the wall and it fell after the zman, then you're going to be chayiv. And we learn from Amat Sad from shore and bor. Okay, so we basically again have 4 answers of the L'Suye Mai. Quickly reviewing them. The first one was a stone package or a knife that fell down. It landed from a roof onto the ground. The second is if you have a rock that was kicked by either a person or an animal and it was moved to another place and did damage. The third has to do with the liquids from your gutters or fertilizer that's put in the Reshus Harabim during Yemos Geshamim, which you're allowed to do, but you're still going to be chayiv. And this one is if the wall fell down, even though you were told to dismantle it, but you didn't after the time it fell. So in that case, you're also going to be chayiv. Question 4. So we did that already. Let's see if there's a question here so far. Question, not an easy question over here, which I got 3/4 correct, which is pretty impressive. The question is TA 24. So you said it's shore and bor. Arba ukimtois begemara. So he actually wanted us to mention all 4 cases. That's what he said. Well, this is a little bit tricky. That one's more from Aish, because Aish is Ruach Acher. And then the other ones, Borhan, this Galgil, Poikin, Bimoisehen, Bekoisel, Ve'ilan, Shanafal Kulu, Yolef, Mibor, Bishor. So they all learn out from Bor. The first one is learned out also from Aish, because the Ruach Acher, as opposed to these other cases, which we learn out from Shor. So it's TA 24. Very challenging question. Great question, but very challenging question. That you need to get all 4 of them right. Okay. TB 25. Be'ez oifen hanig zer shel Rabbi Shmuel shalom ametav hanezek. Okay, we didn't get to that yet. Okay. Weiter. Two dots. Kishehizi Chava Mazik. So Chava Mazik, Chav Hamazik, Chayav Hamazik, my boy. What's this language of Chav? Should say Chayiv. That's the proper lashon. So Amar Bihuda, Amar Rav, Haitana Yerushalmihu, Titani Lishna Kalila. This is Yerushalmi. In Yerushalmi, they speak in a clearer or more concise language. Okay. Okay, weiter. L'shalom tashumi nezek. You pay full damages. Tanaban meitav sedeu meitav karmi yishalim. It says in the pasuk you're supposed to pay the best. So meitav sedeu shel nizik meitav karmi shel nizik dibra b'shmuel. So we have a very important machlokas which we're going to see spilling into the next daf. That when it says you pay the best, is it here it's the nizik's damage. In other words, if let's say the nizik has 3 different lands, Idias, Banis, and Ziburius, as the mazik does. But the mazik's, apparently this is at least in the Havamina, the mazik's best, or let me say it differently, the mazik's middle land is equivalent to the nizik's best land. So then, if we go bust to the nizik, so the mazik only has to give his Bainani field, because that's comparable to the nizik's best land. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Lobo HaKasav, Rabbi Kiva disagrees and says no, the mazik has to pay from his best. Okay, and we'll see what this Kavachomer is tomorrow. Rabbi Shmuel, who says we go bust to the nizik, Achal Shmeina, if he ate the fattiest of the nizik, Mishal Shmeina, so he has to pay back the Shmeina because that's the best of the nizik. Kusha, Mishal Shmeina. I understand, if he ate something which was small, thin, he has to still pay the best. What do you mean? Why should you have to pay Meitav Nizik, the best of the Nizik, when you did damage which was less than that? Doesn't seem fair. So Rav Idi Barav and Hachmai Skin can go in Shachal Aruga ben Arugais. You ate a row among rows. We don't know. And we don't know, you have to pay back the best. Even though you may have consumed and destroyed chusha, but we say, okay, besafik, you have to pay that shmeina. So Rabbi, 1 second. If we knew that he only ate the weakest, well, mishal chusha. So hashlo yadin chusha achal shmeina achal mishal shmeina. We have the din of hamoitzi mechaverai. You want to take something from your friend, alav araya. You have the chiyuv to disprove. So the mazik could say no, it was kusha, unless you somehow prove to me it was shmeina. So in the case of suffix, the mazik should not have to pay the shmeina. That can't be either. Similar to what we said before, but instead, we said that the mazik has very high quality lands, and the mazik's worst is equivalent to the nizik's best. Ubahapligi, Rabbi Shmuel Savar, but the nizik sharminan, and therefore, if we go bust to the nizik, so the mazik only has to give his ziporis, his lower quality fields because it's equivalent to the to the nizik's best. Rabbi Kiva Savar, no. Binamazik Shamina, no matter what, he always has to give his best. So my time, Rabbi Shmuel. Why does Rabbi Shmuel say, in that case, the mazik only has to give his ziboris, which is equivalent to the nizik's idios? Nemar sadel lamata v'nemar sadel lamala. Masad harmul lamala. As it says above, the nizik asad harmul lamata, the nizik. So that's the by the smichas of Parshas. That's what it says. And therefore, because Rashi says sada b'lamal is vir b'steyacher, which means you went into someone else's field. And you did damage where? In the nizik's property. So therefore, probably over here, when we're talking about a field, it's also about we're going busted in nizik. Rabbi Kiva, meitiv sanim, meitiv karim mishal. He should still pay that amount. The heich the kamashalim, when it means the person who has to pay, namely the mazik, has to pay from his best. Rabbi Shmuel, ahani gzer shava v'ahani kra. Ahani gzer shava kene amrina, kene kamina. The gzer shava teaches us again in a situation where the mazik has ziboris, which is equivalent to the nizik's idios, so the mazik only has to give his ziboris. However, hani kra. But this pasuk could also help in the following case. Kegoin tislei la mazik idios v'ziboris. The mazik has the best and the worst field. Idios nizik. V'ziboris the mazik lu shavya ki idios the nizik. Now, the best of the nizik, because the nizik has idios, but the idios, the nizik's best, and the ziboris, the mazik's worst, is lo shava ki idios the nizik. The mishalim memetiv didei. So, even though you can say, well, 1 second, in the case before, the mazik was able to give a ziboris, but that's only when the ziboris is equivalent to the idios of the mazik, of the nizik rather. But if the ziboris of the mazik, the lowest quality field of the mazik, is not as good, just not as good as the best of the niziks, then you cannot give your ziboris. Rather, in that case, the mazik will have to give his best, even though it's far better than the nizik's best. The mazik in that case cannot give his worst, because again, the only time the mazik can give his worst, according to Rabbi Shmuel, is where his worst is equivalent to the idios to the best of the nizik. But if the worst of the mazik is less than the best of the niziks, then he has to give his best. The mazik must give his best. Okay, and that's actually a good place to stop. Let's see if there's another question over here. Adkan.